I don't remember where I saw this comment anymore, whether it was in the community tab or there was a comment underneath a video, but I found the idea of it very intriguing. Basically, infuse Smite Infusion on, in this case, Necros, and buff your minions with loads and loads of radiation damage and give them a chance to confuse the enemies as well. The reason I haven't done this before, even though I'm somewhat of a minion connoisseur, is because I just didn't think it would work. Right? I didn't think Smite Infusion would actually grant the radiation damage to your minions as well. But it makes sense, because minions are considered allies. So here's the build that I decided to try this with, and it's a bit scuffed because I didn't want to reformat my normal setup and break it because I didn't actually know whether it was going to be any good or not. So we have for the aura, corrosive projection to reduce the enemy armor, power drift for a little bit of extra power strength, and narrow-minded for a ton of duration, though if you have another V polarity in there, put primed continuity in there instead. Then I wanted to add some chunkiness to the build, which is where vitality comes in, and after that we have the big Necros combo, which is health conversion for a ton of armor, Despoil, which makes it so that your Desecrate costs health instead of energy, and finally the big one, which you don't see very often, Equilibrium. This is an amazing combination for Necros, because Despoil makes your Desecrate cost health, and Desecrate has a very high chance of spawning a health orb, which you will then pick up and restore that health. But you will also restore energy thanks to Equilibrium, so you have essentially infinite energy as long as you're desecrating corpses, and every time you pick up a health orb, it will refresh your health conversion buff as well. Now after that, we're of course going to put on Smite Infusion, and this makes it so that when you Smite and you hold the ability button down, it will grant 100% bonus radiation damage to you and nearby allies for 40 seconds. This scales with strength, so you can get far more than that. Now, I also had to put in stretch into this build, and this is because I'm using narrow-minded, because the range of Smite Infusion is affected by range, so I had to balance out the loss from narrow-minded with stretch. Otherwise, I would just have to run after the minions and buff them one by one, which is not good. And finally, I have Transient Fortitude to just add some strength for more damage scaling. And let us also not forget that we will have to subsume Smite onto the build, which is an ability that you get from Oberon, and I chose to cover my first ability with it. Now, it's fairly difficult to show the effectiveness of this, because most enemies are just not weak to their damage type. Like, for example, heavy gunners do primarily impact, and they are fairly resistant to it, and they're not particularly weak to radiation either. But their damage is actually pretty good, and you can see how strong they actually are if we mix and match the enemies, like if I put my heavy gunners up against enemy chargers. And you have to remember that I'm only running 50% bonus power strength here, and power strength kind of double dips here because it affects the base damage multiplication on the shadows as well as the bonus damage from Smite Infusion. So the damage scales pretty well as long as you provide enough power strength. Now this isn't something that's exclusive to Necros, you could do this on other frames as well, though I'm not entirely sure whether or not it actually works with mind control frames like Nyx. But even if it doesn't, you can do it on Wukong, which would probably be the strongest one, buffing your Celestial Twin as well as yourself. That's pretty dope. You could do it on Caliban and give your Sentients even more damage, which would be pretty strong as well, because the Sentients have pretty awesome damage to begin with. Or, and I know this is a crazy thought, you could just use it to buff other people in your group. Not to mention how strong this ability is when it comes to Eidolon hunting, because they are weak to radiation. So thank you very much, dear commenter, for letting me know that this actually works. I love it. This is my jam. I could do this all day. And I would recommend you give it a try as well, especially if you like minions. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say, so I thank you very much for watching as always, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.